Welcome everyone. In this tutorial, we will be solving fundamental problem number 6 of chapter 2, force and vectors. In this problem, it states that if force F is to have component along U and V axis, means we have this resultant force. It has one component along this U axis, which is 45-degree anti-clockwise from this resultant force, and we have the another axis which is 105-degree clockwise from the resultant force. And also it is given that Fu is 6 kilometer, means the component of this resultant force along this axis is 6 kilonewton. So we'll be determining the value of the resultant force. They asked about that what will be the value of the resultant force and the value of the component of the resultant force along V axis. So the main aim is that we will be determining the value of the resultant force and one of its component along the V axis. Now for the solution of determining the value of this resultant force and one of its components, so I will be drawing a correct triangle. By correct triangle I means that I will be drawing one side of the triangle as a resultant force and the other two side is Fu and Fv, means its component. So I will be drawing Fu from the resultant force 45-degree anti-clockwise, and I will be drawing the Fv, means the other component of the force, like from this point, and the angle between the resultant force and the other component is 105-degree. So here I will be drawing in this way. You can observe how I am drawing the correct triangle. Here I have drawn the correct triangle here. This side means it is parallel to this force, which is the resultant force F, and the angle between this resultant force to the this straight U axis, which is 45-degree from the this resultant force. So this angle is 45-degree, and this, since we have this and this both are parallel, so means this will be the Fu, means the force component along U axis, and this line both are parallel. Since I have drawn by ruler and this with same angle, it is given 105 degrees. So here we have this force will be Fv. So here you can see that the angle between the resultant force, and the its component along V axis is 105-degree. So this angle is 105-degree. This angle is 45-degree. I will be determining this angle, and by applying sine law, we can get the value of the resultant force and Fv, which is the component along the V axis of the resultant force. So now I will be zooming this figure and I will be determining this angle and then applying sine law. Here we also know the value of the Fu value, which is 6 kilonewton, is given in the question. Here you can see that. So here I have zoomed in. I will be finding this angle. So I am naming it alpha theta. So the sum of all the angles in a triangle is equal to 180. So theta plus 105-degree plus 45-degree. These are three angles in a triangle. So the sum will be 180-degree. So after calculating, theta will be equal to 30-degree. See, so we found the value of this theta. Now we will be applying sine law. Then we can easily determine the value of the resultant force and one of its component along the axis. Now I will be finding the value of the resultant force. So the force divided by sine of its opposite angle. So we have this force. Here you can see that we have this force. So the opposite angle is this 30. So sine 30-degree equal to the given force or known force, which is Fu. Fu value is 6 kilonewton divided by sine of its opposite angle. So we have this force. So the opposite angle is 105 degree. So calculating the value, putting all the values in the calculator, we can get the value of the force, which will be 3.11 kilonewton. So we determine the value of the resultant force. Here we have determined the value of the resultant force. Only this component remains. We will be finding the value for the Fv. So the sine law says that the force divided by sine of its opposite angle. Here we have this force. So the opposite angle will be 45 degree. So sine 45 degree equal to, now it's your turn, that it's up to you whether you are taking this force or this force. So we already know the value and using their respective angles. So I will be using the same as I did here. So Fu, which is 6 divided by sine of their opposite angle. Here we have this angle, so the opposite will be sine 105 degree. So putting the values in calculator, we will get the value of the resultant force. We will be getting the value of the one of the component of the resultant force along v-axis. Fv will become equal to 4.39 kilonewton. So these are the answer for today's problem F2-6. So these are the answer for today's problem. So here we found the value of this resultant force and this Fv and F, which value the resultant force value is 3.11 kilonewton and the V component value is 4.39 kilonewton. Means one of component was given, and from that one of the component of the force we found the value of the resultant force and the other component. So this was the overall gist of today's problem. So I hope you got it.